Welcome to our deep dive. Today, we're taking you on, well, a transatlantic journey, exploring the intertwined histories of the USA and the UK.
Yeah, you've given us a fascinating stack of sources here.
I know, right?
Yeah, from quirky facts to, major historical milestones.
Yeah,
So let's unpack what makes these two nations tick, and maybe even inspire a trip or two along the way.
exactly.
What's fascinating is how these two nations, they're often seen as opposites.
Right.
One with a love for tea and tradition,
Right.
the other for freedom and reinvention.
Yeah.
But they actually have a shared story full of surprises.
Yeah.
And the best way to understand that story
Yeah, like that.
is to look at how events on both sides of the Atlantic unfolded side by side. The U.S. almost had a king,
Really?
or that London Bridge is actually in
Oh,
Arizona.
no, London Bridge is in Arizona. Okay, I'm in.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's rewind all the way back to 1215 in England. Now, while most people associate that year with, Robin Hood,
Yeah.
something else incredibly important happened. The signing of the Magna Carta.
Oh,
King John was forced to sign this document by these rebellious barons,
okay.
and it set a precedent for limiting the power of the monarchy.
So this English document, signed centuries before the American Revolution, had a direct influence on the formation of the United States.
Right.
I can already see how the timeline is going to play a big role here.
Absolutely. The Magna Carta, though imperfect, enshrined the idea that even a king is subject to the law. And this principle resonated deeply with the American colonists centuries later as they fought for independence from British rule.
Incredible. It's amazing how events separated by centuries can be so interconnected.
Now, fast forward to the 17th century. It's 1607. And while England is dealing with its own political turmoil, the first permanent English settlement in North America is being established. Jamestown, Virginia.
Jamestown. I remember learning about the hardships those early settlers faced. Weren't there stories of, near starvation?
Oh, yeah. Those early years were brutal. The settlers faced harsh winters, disease, and conflict with Native Americans. Archaeological evidence even supports those grim accounts of cannibalism during the
Okay.
starving time winter of 1609.
Wow.
It's a stark reminder of the challenges that those pioneers endured. But it's also important to remember that this was a time of cultural exchange. For example, tea drinking, introduced in England in the 17th century,
Okay.
became a central part of British culture.
So while the Jamestown settlers were struggling to survive, people in England were enjoying afternoon tea.
Yeah.
History can be so strange.
Exactly. But back in the American colonies, they put their own spin on it.
Oh, yeah.
Iced tea, a beverage we now strongly associate with the South.
Ah, iced tea. So the iconic beverage that we associate with both nations actually has a shared origin story. But as we know, tea also played a pivotal role in the events that led to the American Revolution.
Indeed. By the 1770s, tensions were rising between Britain and the American colonies. It all came to a head with the Boston Tea Party in 1773,
Right.
when colonists dumped British tea into the harbor to protest taxation without representation.
Yeah, it was about the principle of fairness and self-determination. Right?
Yeah,
They were protesting taxes on various goods, not just tea.
exactly. The colonists were making a statement. They wanted a voice in the British Parliament that was imposing these taxes.
Yeah.
And just 3 years later, in 1776, they formally declared their independence,
Right.
marking the birth of the USA. It's interesting to note, though, that the Continental Congress actually voted for independence on July 2nd, not the 4th. John Adams even predicted that July 2nd would be celebrated with fireworks.
So we've been celebrating Independence Day on the wrong date all along. That's a fun fact to pull out at the next barbecue. But back in Britain, what was happening while America was declaring independence?
Well, while the American colonies were fighting for their freedom, Britain was entering a period of rapid industrial and technological advancement. The late 18th century marked the beginning of the Industrial Revolution,
Right.
which transformed Britain into the, quote, workshop of the world. Factories were springing up, steam engines powered new industries, and a burgeoning railway system connected the nation.
So while America was defining itself as this new nation, Britain was undergoing a revolution of its own. It's incredible how those developments, happening simultaneously yet on opposite sides of the Atlantic, shaped their destinies.
Yeah. It's almost like two parallel universes, each forging its own path, and yet their paths would continue to intersect in ways neither could have predicted.